The voices crept through the bedroom door, heavy with secrets. Miles Thatcher stood frozen on the landing. 20 years of marriage, 14-hour shifts, 2 decades of trust, all crumbling behind that closed door. Mom, an open relationship isn't cheating. Callie's voice was patient, condescending. You're rediscovering yourself. He doesn't need to know. It's not his lane. Miles gripped the banister. His knuckles went white. Kendra giggled nervously. Then, words that shattered everything. You're right. I already started talking to someone. He says I deserve luxury. Miles felt the floor shift beneath his feet. His daughter, his wife, conspirators against his life. He backed down the stairs, grabbed his keys, left without a sound. The war had begun. He just didn't know it yet. Miles returned home an hour later. The house was dark. Kendra lay in bed, apparently asleep. He stared at the ceiling until dawn. His mind raced through 20 years of marriage, looking for signs, moments he'd missed. The next morning, he called in sick. First time in 3 years. While Kendra was at work, Miles became someone else. Someone who installed surveillance equipment. Someone who monitored voice histories on Alexa devices. Someone who tracked digital footprints. He told himself he was gathering information. Deep down, he knew better. He was building a case. The recordings revealed everything. Callie visited daily. She coached her mother like a pimp coaching a courtesan. You should start a TikTok, Callie suggested one afternoon. Call it Radiant After 40. Show people that life doesn't end when you get married. But what if your father sees it? So what if he does? You're not doing anything wrong? Miles watched his wife transform. New clothes, new hairstyle, new makeup techniques learned from YouTube. At Radiant, After 40 gained followers daily. Comments poured in from other women going through similar awakenings. And there, among the supportive messages, was Lars Brennan. His comments were subtle. Compliments on Kendra's authentic energy, suggestions for mindfulness practices, offers to share resources from his coaching practice. Miles researched Lars like he was hunting a criminal, because he was. Lars Brennan had no real credentials. His bio-spiritual somatic coaching came from a weekend workshop in Sedona. His business address was a mail drop in a strip mall. But he was successful at what he did. His Instagram showed dozens of women, all roughly Kendra's age, all glowing with the same authentic energy. Miles dug deeper, 5 different cities over 3 years, always leaving when his client base became aware of his methods. He targeted married women specifically, particularly those going through midlife transitions. He was a professional marriage destroyer. One evening, Miles came home to find Callie's car in the driveway. He parked down the street, approached on foot, military skills from 25 years ago kicking in. Through the living room window, he saw them, wife and daughter, sharing wine, looking at Callie's laptop. He wants to feature you in his wellness retreat promotional material, Callie said excitedly. This could be huge for your brand. Really? Kendra was breathless. He thinks I'm photogenic enough? He thinks you're perfect. He told me you have natural charisma. Miles felt ice in his veins. He told me, not he told you, as if Callie and Lars were having separate conversations about her mother. Miles circled to the kitchen window. Better view of the laptop screen. Hotel booking site, multiple reservations, different names, different dates, same credit card. His stomach lurched. His wife and daughter were both involved with the same man. Neither knew about the other. Miles called his brother-in-law, Rick, cybersecurity expert, bank security. I need a favor. Keep it quiet. What kind of favor? Rick's voice was cautious. Financial tracking, communication monitoring. The works. Miles, that's borderline illegal surveillance. My family is being targeted by a professional hunter. I need to know everything. Rick was silent for 30 seconds. What do you need? Complete digital footprint, credit cards, phone records, social media, email, travel patterns. That's heavy stuff, Miles. If this goes wrong, then I take the fall, alone. Another pause. I'll need 2 hours to set it up. Rick, thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might not like what we find. 2 hours later, comprehensive surveillance was in place. Messages, calls, location data, financial transactions, everything. Rick called back with the first batch of data. Miles, this guy is worse than you thought. How much worse? He's got active accounts in 8 different states, multiple identities, at least 15 different women sending him money regularly. Miles felt his jaw clench. What kind of money? Everything from $50 energy healing sessions to $5,000 intensive spiritual retreats. One woman in Nevada sent him $23,000 for something called a consciousness expansion investment. Jesus, there's more. He's got a network. Other guys using the same playbook. They share target lists, compare techniques. It's like a franchise operation for destroying families. What exactly are you looking for? Rick asked. Evidence, Miles replied. Evidence of what kind of man my family invited into our lives. What are you going to do with this evidence? Miles stared at the monitoring dashboard. Real-time data flowing across the screen. I'm going to destroy him. The surveillance revealed Lars's full operation. 8 women across 3 states, all married, all in their 40s or 50s. His approach was an art form, social media contact, gradual introduction of new age concepts, positioning traditional marriage as oppression. But the travel patterns were most disturbing. City to city in predictable cycles, 3 to 6 months each. In every city, he left police reports. Domestic disturbances, maltreatment complaints, medical emergencies, Portland. Jenny Morrison filed a restraining order. Lars convinced her to leave husband and children. She was hospitalized for severe depression when he disappeared with $15,000. Her 16-year-old son attempted self-destruction when the family collapsed. Denver. 2 sisters both involved with Lars simultaneously. Family rift, one sister's breakdown. The others attempted self-injury when they discovered the truth. Their elderly father died of a heart attack during the family chaos. Phoenix, Rebecca Martinez, 43, emptied her retirement account for Lars's consciousness elevation program. When he vanished, she lost her house. Her daughter dropped out of college. The family is still homeless. Sacramento, Linda Cole and her daughter Amy. Same pattern, same destruction. Amy ended up in a psychiatric facility. Linda attempted to end her life when she realized what she'd done to her family. Each city, each family, same methodical devastation. Miles pulled up the medical reports. Every woman showed signs of the same bacterial infection, same strain, same progression. This wasn't accidental transmission. Lars was deliberately making his sufferers sick. The pattern was clear. Identify vulnerable women, exploit insecurities, extract value, disappear before consequences. But this time would be different. Miles spent another week collecting evidence, building his file. Then he made a decision. Instead of confronting wife and daughter immediately, he would let Lars's scheme play out. Document everything. Give the man enough rope to hang himself. Thursday evening brought the opportunity. Text from Kendra. Attending spiritual workshop over the weekend. Won't be home until Sunday night. Simultaneously, Callie posted about a transformative retreat experience. Miles knew they were both meeting Lars, still unaware of each other's involvement. He took Friday off, followed Kendra to the boutique hotel. Corporate keycard gave him access to employee areas. He positioned himself to observe without being seen. What he witnessed broke something fundamental inside him. Lars had booked multiple rooms, spent time with each woman separately, fed them individualized versions of the same script. With Kendra, he emphasized untapped sensuality. With Callie, old soul wisdom. Both believed they were special, chosen, uniquely suited to understand his revolutionary approach. Neither knew the other was there. Miles documented everything. Small camera borrowed from Rick's security equipment, timestamps, room numbers, duration of encounters. By Sunday afternoon, he had enough evidence to destroy Lars permanently, but he wasn't finished. Sunday night, Kendra returned, glowing with transformative energy. Miles waited with tea and a gentle smile. How was your workshop? Incredible. I learned so much about authentic feminine power. Meet any interesting people? The facilitator was amazing. This man named Lars, who understands the spiritual journey women go through. He has such insight into how marriage can limit personal growth. Miles nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like he made quite an impression. He did. I feel like he really sees me, not just as a wife or mother, but as a complete person. I'm glad you had that experience. He meant it in a twisted way. Because what Kendra experienced wasn't real connection. It was professional manipulation designed to make her feel exactly this way. Miles continued surveillance while maintaining his supportive husband facade. He encouraged Kendra's new interests, Even offered to help promote her TikTok. You're being unusually supportive, Kendra observed. I thought you'd be threatened by my personal growth. Why would I be threatened? If you're happy, I'm happy. Technically true. Miles was happy, happy to be building an airtight case against the man destroying his family. Thursday that week, surveillance detected something alarming. Both Kendra and Callie were messaging Lars about feeling unwell, fatigue, fever, abdominal pain. Both dismissed symptoms as detox reactions. Miles knew better. He'd seen medical reports from Lars's previous sufferers. Friday night, Callie was in the emergency room. Severe abdominal pain, dangerous fever. Doctors admitted her immediately. Serious internal infection. Miles sat by his daughter's bedside. She drifted in and out of consciousness. Dad? Callie's voice was weak. What happened to me? You're sick, sweetheart. Doctors are taking care of you. Everything hurts. Just rest. Focus on getting better. Callie squeezed his hand. I'm sorry about Mom. I know you know. I can see it in your eyes. Miles looked at his daughter. Beneath the radical rhetoric was just a confused young woman, manipulated by an expert. We'll talk when you're feeling better. Callie closed her eyes. Tears leaked from the corners. He said he loved us both. He said we were special. The admission hit like a physical blow. His daughter knew. She'd known all along that Lars was involved with her mother. How long? Miles asked quietly. 6 months. He found me first through social media. Said I had energy that could help other women heal. Then he asked about family. When I mentioned Mom's struggles, he said he could help her too. Miles felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't opportunistic predation. It was targeted, calculated destruction. Lars had researched them, identified vulnerabilities, crafted a specific plan. Did you love him? Callie opened her eyes, studied her father's face. I thought I did. But looking back, I think I just loved how he made me feel about myself. Like I was wise and special. And your mother? I think she felt the same way. Like she was more than just a middle-aged housewife. Miles squeezed his daughter's hand. You are wise and special. Your mother is much more than a housewife. You didn't need him to tell you that. Callie started crying, deep, racking sobs. I'm so sorry, Dad. I destroyed everything. No, he destroyed our family. You and your mother were just the weapons he used. 2 days later, Kendra collapsed. Same symptoms. More severe. Infection had spread. Required surgical intervention. Miles sat in the surgical waiting room, alone with his thoughts and plans. Lars was preparing to leave town, just like Portland and Denver. But this time, he wouldn't disappear quietly. Miles pulled out his phone, sent a message to an investigative journalist specializing in fraudulent wellness practitioners. Attached everything: hotel records, financial transactions, medical reports from previous sufferers, timeline of the Thatcher family's destruction. This man is a hunter who targets vulnerable families. I have evidence. Interested in a story? Reply came within an hour. Very interested. Can we meet tomorrow? Miles smiled grimly. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2. Making sure Lars Brennan faced consequences for every family he destroyed. The ICU was a cathedral of whispered conversations and electronic beeping. Miles had lived in this antiseptic world for 3 days, watching his wife fight an infection that seemed determined to claim her life. Kendra lay unconscious, connected to machines monitoring every breath and heartbeat. Doctors spoke carefully about systemic complications. Miles understood the subtext. His wife might not survive. 4th day, Callie was discharged. She appeared at Kendra's bedside, looking fragile, hollow-eyed. How is she? The same. Next 24 hours are critical. They sat in silence, both staring at Kendra's chest rising and falling. I need to tell you something, Callie said finally. I found messages on my phone from Lars to other women. He was doing this to other families, too. Miles felt his composure crack. What kind of messages? Callie pulled out her phone, shaking hands. I can't get them to sync properly. But there are fragments. Conversations with women named Rebecca and Sarah and Janet, all married, all with daughters. Partial message threads painted a horrifying picture. Lars wasn't just running con games. He was systematically targeting mother-daughter relationships, exploiting generational tensions to maximize gains. There's more, Callie said, voice breaking. I think he made us sick on purpose. Miles felt a chill shoot through him. What do you mean? I remembered something from that last weekend. He gave us both special teas, said they were part of an ancient cleansing ritual, made a big deal about preparation. She paused, struggling to continue. But I saw him preparing them. He was wearing gloves, handling packets like they were dangerous, and he kept checking his phone, like following some timeline. Miles stared at his daughter, processing implications. If Lars had deliberately infected them, if this wasn't negligent transmission but a calculated act of damage, everything changed. Did you save any of the tea? No, but I know where he gets it. A supplier in Oregon. Sells consciousness-expanding botanicals to spiritual practitioners. Miles started taking notes. If he could trace the source, prove deliberate intent, the legal landscape shifted dramatically. There's something else. I think he recorded us. Both of us. There were cameras in the hotel rooms, positioned to look like decorations. Lars wasn't just manipulating women for emotional satisfaction. He was creating blackmail material for extended control. We have to call the police, Callie said. No, not yet. Callie stared in shock. Dad, this man infected us. We can't go to police with fragments and speculation. Lars is too smart. He'll have lawyers, alibis, explanations. We need more than suspicions. Then what do we do? Miles looked at his unconscious wife, then back at his daughter. We make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Ever. What does that mean? Miles stood, his decision crystallizing. It means we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Callie grabbed his arm. Dad, you're scaring me. Miles looked down at his daughter, this young woman manipulated by bad man. I've been gathering evidence on Lars for weeks. Financial records, travel patterns, communications with other sufferers. I know where he lives, how he operates, who his suppliers are. And I'm going to use that information to make sure he faces consequences for every family he's destroyed. Callie released his arm, studied his face with growing alarm. This isn't you, Dad. You're not vengeful. You're right. I'm not. But the man who trusted his family to act with integrity is gone. The man who believed good intentions would protect the people he loved is dead. He gestured toward Kendra's motionless form. That man couldn't save his wife from a hunter. That man couldn't protect his daughter from being manipulated into betraying her own family. That man was weak. Dad, but this man understands that some people only respond to consequences. This man has resources, connections, and nothing left to lose. Callie was crying now. Please don't do something you'll regret. Miles wiped a tear from his daughter's cheek. Sweetheart, our family is already gone. The question now is whether other families will suffer the same fate. But what about forgiveness? Healing? Forgiveness is for people capable of remorse. Healing is for wounds that aren't actively being inflicted. Lars is a hunter who has destroyed lives across multiple states. He's probably moving on to his next targets right now. Miles showed Callie a screenshot from Lars's social media. Post from that morning. Airport photo. Caption about new opportunities for spreading consciousness. He's already running. Callie stared at the post, face crumpling with realization that Lars was abandoning them without a backward glance. He never loved us, she whispered. No, he never loved anyone. We were just convenient targets. They sat in silence. Finally, Callie spoke again. What do you need me to do? Miles looked at his daughter with surprise. You want to help. I want to make sure he can't do this to other families. It won't be pretty. No guarantee we'll get justice through official channels. Then we find unofficial channels. You said you have resources. Use them. Miles felt something shift inside him, a realignment of purpose that was both liberating and terrifying. First, we find his current location. Airport post was misdirection. I can track his credit cards. How? Your Uncle Rick works in bank security. He owes me favors. Miles started composing a message. Second, we contact his other sufferers. Coordinate efforts. Individual complaints disappear. Coordinated campaigns get attention. I can help with that. I'm good with social media and research. Third, we ensure our evidence reaches the right people. Federal investigators who specialize in interstate fraud. And if that doesn't work, Miles looked at his daughter, seeing adult determination that hadn't been there before. Then we make sure the story becomes too big to ignore. We make Lars Brennan famous for all the wrong reasons. Callie nodded grimly. When do we start? We already have, Miles replied, hitting send on his message to Rick. As if summoned, Kendra's doctor appeared. Dr. Patricia Vance, woman in her 50s with steady competence. Mr. Thatcher, could I speak with you privately? Miles stepped into the hallway, heart hammering. Callie followed. Your wife's condition has stabilized, Dr. Vance said. Miles felt his knees nearly buckle with relief. The antibiotics are gaining ground. Thank God, Callie whispered. However, I need to ask about her recent activities. The infection is unusual, not typically transmitted through normal contact. Miles exchanged glances with Callie. What kind of transmission? Intimate contact with someone already infected, or exposure to contaminated substances. I've seen similar cases in other cities, always involving women participating in alternative wellness practices. Other cities? Portland, Denver, and Phoenix. The CDC has been tracking a pattern, but sufferers have been reluctant to provide details. Miles felt a chill. Doctor, are you saying this infection is connected to organized activity? The pattern suggests deliberate transmission rather than a random occurrence. We need to report this, Callie said. Yes, both to local authorities and the CDC. Miles called Detective Sarah Martinez, woman he'd worked with when the shipping company was targeted by organized theft. Sarah, it's Miles Thatcher. I need to report a case that might be connected to federal investigations. Miles, it's been a while. What kind of case? Interstate fraud, systematic targeting of families, deliberate transmission of infectious diseases. Sarah's tone sharpened. Tell me everything. Miles laid out the evidence. Financial records, travel patterns, medical reports, recorded conversations, digital communications. Holy crap, Miles, this is a federal case. Multiple jurisdictions. We need to bring in the FBI. Already thought of that. I've got connections. What connections? Agent Rebecca Foster, Western District. She owes me from the shipping case. I'll call her tonight. Can you have everything ready for transfer? Already digitized, encrypted. Ready for secure transmission? Miles, if this is as big as you're describing, you might have stumbled onto something massive. It's bigger than one hunter, Sarah. This guy has a network, other men using identical techniques. They share sufferer lists, compare methods. How do you know that? Because I've been tracking communications between Lars and at least 6 other individuals in different states. They have a private forum. They call themselves Family Liberation Specialists. Sarah was quiet for 30 seconds. Miles, you just described organized crime. That's exactly what it is. The conversation changed everything. Detective Martinez confirmed Lars was already a person of interest in multiple investigations. The FBI had been tracking him, but unable to gather sufficient evidence. Until now. Within 48 hours, Miles was sitting in a federal building in Denver. Conference room full of agents, prosecutors, and analysts. Agent Foster led the briefing. Mr. Thatcher, what you've uncovered appears to be a coordinated network of hunters targeting vulnerable families across at least 8 states. She pulled up a map on the projector. Red dots marked cities where similar cases had been reported. Each dot represents families that have been systematically destroyed by men using nearly identical methods: social media targeting, psychological manipulation, family disruption, financial exploitation. How many families? Miles asked. Conservative estimate? Over 200 families in the past 3 years. Miles felt his jaw clench. And you've known about this? We suspected, but we couldn't connect the dots. Your evidence provides the links we needed. Agent Foster clicked to the next slide. Photos of 12 men. These are the confirmed members of what they call the Liberation Network. They operate like a franchise, established territories, shared techniques, coordinated timing to avoid overlap. Miles studied the faces, memorized them. What's the next step? Coordinated arrests across multiple states, simultaneous raids. We take down the entire network. When? Tomorrow night. Mr. Thatcher, if you have documentation and evidence of deliberate infection, we need everything immediately. This man has been destroying families for years. Miles looked at Callie. She nodded firmly. We'll be there within the hour. As they prepared to leave, Kendra's eyes fluttered open. First time in days, voice weak but clear. Miles? Where's Lars? I need to see Lars. Miles took his wife's hand, chose words carefully. Lars is gone, Kendra. He left town, but you're safe now. Kendra's eyes filled with tears. He said he loved me. He said we had a future. I know, but he wasn't who he claimed to be. I'm so sorry. I destroyed everything. Miles squeezed her hand. We'll talk about everything when you're stronger. Right now, focus on getting better. As they left the hospital, Callie grabbed her father's arm. Are you going to forgive her? Miles considered carefully. I'm going to make sure she has the chance to heal from what he did. Beyond that, we'll see. And me? Miles looked at his daughter, manipulated into betraying her family, but now ready to fight for justice. You're already forgiven. Now, let's make sure Lars Brennan can't hurt anyone else. The war against Lars was about to begin in earnest. This time, Miles had allies. Evidence. The full weight of federal law enforcement. The hunter was about to become the hunted. 6 months later, Miles stood in the witness box of a federal courthouse in Denver, facing a jury that would decide Lars Brennan's fate. The man who had destroyed his family sat at the defendant's table, no longer the confident manipulator. Prison life had not been kind. Mr. Thatcher, said Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Foster, please tell the court how you first became aware of the defendant's activities. Miles had rehearsed this moment for weeks, but standing here now with Kendra and Callie in the gallery and Lars 20 feet away, the weight threatened to overwhelm him. I overheard a conversation between my wife and daughter, Miles began steadily. They were discussing something called rediscovery and authentic living. It became clear my wife was involved with another man. My daughter was encouraging this relationship. What did you do with this information? Initially, I gathered evidence. I installed recording devices and monitoring software to understand the scope of what was happening. And what did you discover? Miles took a breath. The prosecution had spent 3 days laying out technical evidence. Now it was time for human impact. I discovered that Lars Brennan was conducting a systematic campaign to destroy my family. He had researched us, identified our vulnerabilities, crafted specific manipulation strategies designed to exploit both my wife's midlife crisis and my daughter's idealism. Can you describe his methods? Miles turned toward the jury, made eye contact. He presented himself as a spiritual coach who could help women discover their authentic selves. He used social media to identify potential targets, married women going through transitions, particularly those with daughters active in wellness communities. How did he approach your family specifically? He contacted my daughter first, through her Instagram where she posted about feminist theory and alternative healing. He spent weeks building a relationship, positioning himself as a mentor who understood her generation's desire for authentic living. Miles paused, glanced at Callie in the gallery. She nodded encouragingly. Once he gained my daughter's trust, he asked about family dynamics. When she mentioned her mother's struggles with feeling unappreciated, he suggested he might help her as well. So he used your daughter to gain access to your wife. Exactly. But he went further. He convinced my daughter that traditional marriage was a patriarchal institution, suppressing women's authentic nature. He taught her to see her mother's infidelity not as betrayal, but as liberation. What was the result? Miles felt his composure crack slightly. Even after months of processing, his daughter's betrayal still cut deep. My daughter became an active participant in encouraging her mother's infidelity. She helped create social media accounts to attract men, coached her on lying to me, provided emotional support for behavior that violated every value our family shared. Did you confront them? No. I realized Mr. Brennan was too sophisticated for direct confrontation. Instead, I continued gathering evidence while researching his background. What did your research reveal? That Lars Brennan had been operating this same scheme in multiple cities over several years. He would identify vulnerable families, exploit relationships between mothers and daughters, extract whatever value he could, then disappear when sufferers began comparing notes. Miles pulled out a pre-approved folder. I documented similar patterns in Portland, Denver, Phoenix, and Sacramento. In each city, he left broken families, medical emergencies, financial devastation. You mentioned medical emergencies. Can you elaborate? This was the hardest but most critical part. Both my wife and daughter became seriously ill after their involvement with Mr. Brennan intensified. Initially, they dismissed symptoms as detox reactions from spiritual practices, but their conditions deteriorated rapidly. What kind of symptoms? High fever, severe abdominal pain, internal inflammation requiring emergency intervention. My daughter recovered relatively quickly. My wife spent days in a medically induced coma. Did you determine the cause? Yes. Medical testing revealed both women had been infected with a rare strain of bacteria not typically transmitted through casual contact. It required intimate exposure or deliberate administration. Miles paused. Let the implications sink in. Investigation revealed Mr. Brennan had been purchasing consciousness-expanding botanicals from an unregulated supplier in Oregon. These substances contained bacteria and parasites that could cause the symptoms my family experienced. Are you saying the defendant deliberately infected your wife and daughter? Evidence strongly suggests Mr. Brennan used contaminated substances as part of his manipulation strategy. The infections weakened sufferers' judgment, made them dependent on his care, created medical emergencies that distracted from his other activities. The courtroom was silent. Several jurors looked visibly shaken. Mr. Thatcher, what impact did these events have on your family? Miles looked down at his hands, gathering himself. My marriage is over. Despite understanding that my wife was manipulated and exploited, the trust that held our relationship together has been irreparably damaged. And your relationship with your daughter? We're rebuilding slowly. She's in therapy, working to understand how she was manipulated into betraying her own family. She feels tremendous guilt. Has your wife recovered? Physically, yes. Emotionally, she's struggling with the realization that someone she thought loved her was systematically destroying her life. Do you hold Mr. Brennan responsible for these impacts? Miles looked directly at Lars. The man who had once exuded confidence now looked smaller, diminished by months of incarceration. I hold him fully responsible, not just for the infidelity or manipulation, but for the calculated cruelty of turning family members against each other. He didn't just destroy relationships, he weaponized love itself. Attorney Foster nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. The defense attorney, Patricia Wells, rose for cross-examination. Mr. Thatcher, isn't it true that you installed surveillance equipment without your wife's knowledge? Yes. You monitored her private communications for weeks? Yes. You essentially spied on your own family? Miles met her gaze steadily. I gathered evidence of criminal activity targeting my family. But you didn't know it was criminal at the time, did you? I suspected my wife was being manipulated by someone who was systematically targeting our family. How could you know that? Without investigating? Because I recognized the pattern. Mr. Brennan's approach was too sophisticated, too calculated to be a simple affair. Wells shuffled through her notes. Mr. Thatcher, you've testified about gathering extensive evidence, but isn't it true that you also engaged in stalking behavior? Following your wife to hotels? Photographing her private meetings? I documented criminal activity. You violated her privacy. She violated our marriage. That's not a legal justification for surveillance, is it? Neither is deliberately infecting families with contaminated substances. Objection, Wells said sharply. Non-responsive. Sustained, the judge replied. Answer the question, Mr. Thatcher. Miles looked directly at the jury. I did what was necessary to protect my family and expose a hunter. Wells tried a different approach. Mr. Thatcher, you've painted my client as some kind of master manipulator. But isn't it possible that these women simply made choices you didn't approve of? Choices based on false information. But choices nonetheless. Your client convinced my wife that infidelity was spiritual growth. He convinced my daughter that helping her mother commit infidelity was feminist empowerment. Those aren't choices. That's brainwashing. Objection. The witness is not qualified to diagnose brainwashing. Sustained, Wells continued. Mr. Thatcher, you've testified that your wife and daughter became ill after contact with my client. But isn't it true that you have no direct evidence he deliberately infected them? I have evidence he purchased contaminated substances from an unregulated supplier. But you don't have evidence he intended to cause illness. I have evidence he used identical contaminated substances with 12 other women across 4 states, all of whom developed identical symptoms. That's not coincidence. Objection. Assumes facts, not an evidence. Overruled. The witness may answer based on the evidence presented. Miles continued. Your client used a calculated method to impair women's judgment by administering contaminated products. He documented the effects. He adjusted dosages based on desired outcomes. He monitored symptoms through follow-up sessions disguised as spiritual counseling. Those are serious accusations, Mr. Thatcher. Do you have documentation of this monitoring? Miles pulled out a folder. Yes, audio recordings of Mr. Brennan discussing symptom management with his supplier, email correspondence about dosage optimization, text messages coordinating timing of substance administration with emotional manipulation sessions. The courtroom fell silent. Wells looked genuinely shaken. Where did you obtain these recordings? Through legal surveillance techniques approved by federal investigators. Legal surveillance of my client? Of a criminal enterprise targeting vulnerable families. Wells tried to regroup. Mr. Thatcher, you seem very invested in painting my client as a criminal mastermind. But isn't it possible you're simply a bitter husband who can't accept that his wife chose someone else? Miles felt anger flash through him, but his voice remained steady. Miss Wells, your client didn't just target my wife. He systematically destroyed 12 families across 4 states. He created blackmail material to extend his control. He operated as part of an organized network dedicated to family destruction. Objection. The witness is testifying about matters outside his personal knowledge. Overruled. This testimony is based on evidence already admitted, Miles continued. If this was about my wife choosing someone else, I would have filed for divorce and moved on. Instead, I spent 18 months documenting a criminal enterprise because I realized my family was just one target in a much larger operation. Wells was clearly struggling. Mr. Thatcher, you've described extensive surveillance and investigation activities. How much time did you spend on these activities? Every free moment for 18 months. That's a significant investment of time and energy. Some might call it obsessive. Some might call it justice. But it affected your work performance, didn't it? Your employer had to cover your frequent absences? My employer supported my cooperation with federal law enforcement. Because you told them you were helping with a federal investigation? Because I was helping with a federal investigation. Wells was grasping now. Mr. Thatcher, isn't it true that you contacted media outlets to publicize this case? I contacted investigative journalists who specialize in exposing hunters for personal satisfaction, to warn other potential sufferers, but also for revenge. Against my client? Miles looked directly at Lars for the first time during cross-examination. Miss Wells, revenge would have been meeting your client in a dark alley with a baseball bat. Justice is sitting in this courtroom watching him face consequences for destroying families. The distinction hung in the air. Several jurors nodded slightly. Wells seemed to realize she was losing ground. No further questions. As Miles stepped down, he felt relief and emptiness. He'd told his story, presented evidence, faced cross-examination, but testifying had forced him to relive every painful detail. The prosecution rested the following day. After presenting testimony from 11 other sufferers, the defense's case was brief. Character witnesses. Expert testimony suggesting bacterial infections could have been contracted through other means, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed clear patterns of exploitation. Medical evidence demonstrated deliberate transmission of pathogens. Digital forensics revealed sophisticated operations targeting vulnerable families. Most damning were the recordings. Dozens of hours of Lars manipulating women, convincing them that betraying their families was spiritual advancement. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts, the foreman announced. Lars showed no emotion as the verdict was read. He'd been convicted of interstate fraud, racketeering, deliberately inflicting bodily injury, related charges that would keep him in federal prison for 25 years. Outside the courthouse, Miles stood with Callie and several other sufferers' families. The Denver weather was crisp and clear. Is it over? Callie asked. Miles looked at his daughter. This young woman forced to grow up too quickly, who'd learned hard lessons about trust and manipulation. The legal part is over. The rest, that's going to take time. Jenny Morrison approached them, the Portland woman whose restraining order had been one of the first pieces of evidence. Thank you, she said to Miles. If you hadn't connected all of us, he would still be out there destroying families. We all did our part. The important thing is that he can't hurt anyone else. What will you do now? Miles considered the question. For months, his entire existence had been focused on building the case against Lars. I'm going to rebuild my life. Figure out who I am when I'm not defined by what was done to my family. Are you going back to shipping? No. I'm thinking about sufferer advocacy, helping other families who've been targeted by hunters like Lars. Callie looked at him with surprise. Really? There are a lot of people out there who need help connecting the dots, who need someone to believe their story and help them gather evidence. That sounds like Dad, always trying to fix things. Not fix, help. There's a difference. As they walked away from the courthouse, Miles felt something he hadn't experienced in over a year. Hope. Not for his marriage. That was beyond repair. But hope for something new. Something built on hard-won knowledge that evil existed but could be fought. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Thatcher, my name is Patricia Pitt. I think my family is being targeted by someone similar to Lars Brennan. Can you help us? Miles showed the message to Callie. Are you going to respond? Miles looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, I'll call you tonight. You're not alone. The war against hunters like Lars was far from over, but Miles had found his new mission, making sure no other family had to fight that war alone. As they reached the parking garage, Callie grabbed his arm. Dad, I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry. For everything. Miles stopped and turned to face his daughter fully. Callie, you were 21 and manipulated by a professional hunter with years of experience targeting people exactly like you. Yes, you made mistakes. Yes, there were consequences. But you were a sufferer too. But I chose to encourage Ma. You chose to do what someone you trusted told you was right. That's not the same as choosing to destroy your family. You thought you were helping your mother find happiness? Callie started crying again. I don't know how to forgive myself. Miles pulled his daughter into a hug, held her tightly. You forgive yourself by doing better, by learning from what happened and using that knowledge to help other people, by becoming someone who can recognize manipulation and protect others from it. Is that what you're doing? Forgiving yourself? Miles thought about the question. He'd made mistakes too. Working too much, neglecting his marriage, failing to recognize signs of manipulation. I'm trying. Some days are better than others. They held each other for several minutes, united in their shared loss and determination to build something better from the ruins. When they separated, Callie managed a genuine smile. So, sufferer advocacy? Think there's room for an assistant who understands how young women get targeted? Miles smiled back. I think that could be very valuable. As they drove away, Miles felt something settle in his chest. Not peace, exactly, but a sense of purpose that had been missing. Lars had destroyed the Thatcher family, but from that destruction, something new was emerging. Something harder, wiser, infinitely more dangerous to hunters who thought they could destroy families with impunity. The hunter had learned to hunt, and there were plenty of hunters still out there who needed to be stopped. 1 year later, Miles sat in a Portland coffee shop, laptop open to a spreadsheet tracking 14 ongoing investigations across 7 states. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Thatcher Family Advocacy, he answered. Not official. He operated as an independent consultant working with law enforcement and sufferer support organizations. Mr. Thatcher? My name is Rebecca Stone. I got your number from Patricia Pitt. She said you helped her family with a situation involving a spiritual coach? Miles opened a new document. Yes, I worked with the Pitt family. Tell me about your situation. It's my mother and sister. They've both gotten involved with this man who calls himself a relationship liberation specialist. He's convinced them that traditional family structures are toxic. Miles felt familiar recognition. How did they meet him? Through social media. He found my sister first. She's been posting about feminist theory. Then he started asking about family dynamics when she mentioned my mother's divorce. He offered to help your mother heal from relationship trauma? Exactly. And now they're both involved with him. Neither will admit it. But I think they know about each other. Miles was taking notes, building a timeline. What's this man's name? He calls himself Sage River. I think that's made up. He has websites for conscious connection coaching and authentic closeness practices. Can you send me links to his online presence? Already did. I emailed everything to the address Patricia gave me. Miles pulled up his email, found Rebecca's message, dozens of screenshots. As he scrolled, a disturbingly familiar pattern emerged. Rebecca, have your mother and sister been experiencing health issues lately? Fatigue, digestive problems? Anything that started after they increased involvement with this man? Pause on the other end. Actually, yes. They both had some kind of stomach bug a few weeks ago. Nothing serious, but it lasted longer than normal. Did they participate in any ritual or ceremony with him? Anything involving special foods or drinks? He had them do some cleansing ceremony at his retreat center. They said it was transformative, but they've been weird since. Miles was pulling up his database of known manipulators. Sage River wasn't a name he recognized, but the pattern was identical to Lars's operation. Rebecca, listen carefully. Your family is being targeted by someone who has done this to other families. What your mother and sister are experiencing isn't authentic spiritual growth. It's systematic manipulation designed to exploit and control them. I knew it, Rebecca said, voice breaking with relief. Everyone keeps telling me I'm being paranoid, but something felt wrong. Trust your instincts. They're probably saving your family. Miles spent the next hour walking Rebecca through the process he'd developed with 13 other families. Documenting evidence, identifying patterns, coordinating with law enforcement, connecting with other sufferers. The methodology had become refined through practice. First, establish timeline of contact and escalation. Second, gather digital evidence before the hunter became aware of investigation. Third, coordinate with other targeted families. Fourth, bring in law enforcement and medical professionals who understood the pattern. Most importantly, provide emotional support to family members struggling to understand how their loved ones had been manipulated. Mr. Thatcher, Rebecca said as their call ended, can I ask something personal? Go ahead. Patricia told me what happened to your family. How do you do this work without it destroying you emotionally? Miles looked out the window at the busy Portland street. It doesn't destroy me. It gives me purpose. Every family we help, every hunter we expose, it means what happened to my family contributed to something positive. Do you ever talk to your ex-wife or daughter? I talk to my daughter regularly. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly. As for Kendra, Miles paused. We exchange emails occasionally. She's doing better, but there's too much damage for us to have a real relationship. Do you regret not trying to save your marriage? A question Miles had wrestled with for months. I regret that it couldn't be saved, but I don't regret prioritizing justice over reconciliation. Some violations of trust are too fundamental to rebuild from. After ending the call, Miles returned to his spreadsheet. The numbers told a story both encouraging and sobering. 14 active investigations, 37 families assisted over 18 months, 8 convictions obtained, estimated 42 additional families saved from targeted manipulation. His phone buzzed with a text from Callie. Dad, saw the news about the conviction in Sacramento. Another one down. Proud of you. Miles smiled, typed back. Team effort. Thanks for the research on his social media patterns. Callie had graduated early, was now working full-time as a digital forensic specialist, focusing on cases involving online hunters who targeted families. Her experience as a sufferer gave her unique insights into manipulation tactics. She was also in therapy twice a week, still working through guilt about her role in the family's destruction, but she was channeling that guilt into something constructive. Miles finished his coffee, headed to his next appointment, meeting with FBI agents coordinating a multi-state investigation into what they'd started calling family disruption networks, organized groups of hunters sharing information, tactics, sometimes targets. The investigation had grown from their work on the Lars case, when they discovered he'd been communicating with at least 6 other individuals using similar methods. What had started as isolated incidents was revealing itself to be a coordinated attack on family structures. As Miles walked through downtown Portland, he reflected on how much his life had changed since that night when he'd overheard his wife and daughter planning his betrayal. The man who discovered that conversation had been focused on saving his marriage. The man walking through Portland today had different priorities: exposing hunters, supporting sufferers, dismantling networks that targeted vulnerable families. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life that had emerged from the ruins of everything he'd lost. His phone rang again, Detective Sarah Martinez from Denver. Miles? We just arrested someone using the name Marcus Dawn in Colorado Springs. Same pattern as Brennan. Targeting mother-daughter pairs through social media, using contaminated substances, building blackmail material. We found your contact information in his files. Miles felt his pulse quicken. He was researching me? Looks like it. Had photos of you in Cali, your address, work information, bank records, daily schedules. This guy was planning something. What kind of something? Revenge. His notebook had detailed plans. He blamed you for destroying the network. Called you the family destroyer. Catchy. Miles, this isn't funny. He had weapons. Surveillance equipment. Plans to abduct Callie and use her to force you to stop your investigations. Miles stopped walking, scanned the street with new awareness. Where is he now? Federal custody. But he's not talking. And we think there are others. How many others? Unknown. But Marcus had a contact list, encrypted. We're working on cracking it. Sarah, I need protection details for Callie. If they're targeting my family, already on it. We've got surveillance on both of you until we figure out how extensive this network is. Good, but I'm not hiding. Miles, these people are dangerous. They see you as an existential threat to their operation. They're right. Miles felt familiar coldness settle in his chest, the same focused determination that had driven him to expose Lars. Send me everything you have on Marcus Dawn, and start connecting him to other cases. If there's a network, we're going to find all of them. Miles, you need to be careful. These people know who you are now. Good. Let them know I'm coming. What are you planning? What I've always been planning. Hunt them down, one by one, until there are none left. After ending the call, Miles immediately dialed Callie. Dad? What's wrong? Where are you right now? At work. Why do you sound like that? Don't go home tonight. Don't go anywhere alone. Federal agents will pick you up in 20 minutes. Dad, you're scaring me. Good. Stay scared until this is over. Miles spent the next 2 hours coordinating with federal agents, setting up safe houses, reviewing security protocols, planning offensive operations, but he also made other calls to Jenny Morrison, to the Pitt family, to every sufferer's family he'd worked with. It's not over, he told each of them. They're coming for us, but we're going to hit them first. By evening, Miles had assembled something unprecedented. A coordinated network of sufferers' families, supported by federal law enforcement, armed with comprehensive intelligence about hunter operations. They called it the Hunters Network. The hunters thought they were hunting Miles. They had no idea they'd just walked into a trap. After ending the call, Miles stood on the busy Portland sidewalk, made a decision that would have terrified the man he'd been 18 months ago. Instead of going home and taking precautions, instead of backing down, he was going to escalate. He pulled out his laptop, began composing an email to every sufferer's family he'd worked with, every law enforcement contact he'd developed, every journalist who'd covered their investigations. Subject line, "It's time to go on the offensive." The message outlined his plan. Instead of responding to individual cases as they emerged, they would start proactively hunting hunters who used family disruption tactics. They would build comprehensive databases, coordinate investigations across state lines. Make being a family hunter too dangerous and unprofitable to continue. Miles Thatcher had started this journey as a man trying to save his marriage. He was ending it as someone far more dangerous to the manipulators who destroyed families for profit. His phone buzzed one more time. Text from an unknown number. "We know who you are, Miles Thatcher. We know where you live. Stop interfering with our work or face the consequences." Miles looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Come and get me." The message was sent before he could reconsider. Whatever happened next, at least it would be on his terms. As he drove home to prepare for war, Miles thought about the promise he'd made in that hospital corridor 18 months ago. That Lars would never hurt another family the way he'd hurt the Thatchers. He'd kept that promise. Now it was time to make a bigger one. The hunter was ready to be hunted. And he was looking forward to the hunt. 2 weeks later, Miles stood in another warehouse. Different city, different man, but the same purpose. Marcus Dawn lay unconscious at his feet, zip-tied, gagged, surrounded by evidence of his crimes against 12 families across 4 states. But getting here hadn't been easy. Marcus had been smart, careful. He'd been tracking Miles for weeks, learning his patterns, planning an ambush. Miles had walked into the warehouse knowing it was a trap, but he'd come prepared. The fight had been brutal. Marcus was younger, stronger, armed with a tactical knife and military training. But Miles had been fighting hunters for 2 years, and he'd learned to be patient, methodical, ruthless when necessary. Marcus had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed Miles would come alone. Callie had been waiting in the rafters with a tranquilizer tool. Jenny Morrison had covered the back exit. 3 other sufferers' family members had sealed off escape routes. When Marcus lunged at Miles with the knife, Callie put 2 darts in his back. When he tried to run, Jenny tackled him like a linebacker. When he tried to fight, the other families swarmed him. Miles hadn't even needed to throw a punch. But he delivered the final message while Marcus was still conscious. "You thought you could threaten my daughter," Miles had said quietly. "You thought you could intimidate the families you'd targeted. You thought wrong." Marcus had tried to speak through the growing paralysis from the tranquilizer. "Every family you destroyed is now hunting you," Miles continued. "They're all coming for your network." Marcus's eyes had widened with fear before the pills pulled him under. Now Miles pulled out his phone, called Detective Martinez. "Sarah, I have a package for you. Marcus Dawn. Gift-wrapped and ready for federal prosecution." "Miles, what did you do?" "I stopped a manipulator, just like we agreed." "Where are you?" Miles looked around the warehouse. At the unconscious man who'd thought he could threaten Callie, who'd thought the Thatcher family could be intimidated into silence. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Later that night, as Miles drove home, Callie asleep in the passenger seat, he glanced at her face, older now and wiser. Wounded, but healing. He parked outside his house. Everything was quiet. No messages, no threats, just wind and the hum of streetlights. For the first time in 2 years, Miles Thatcher was no longer a hunter. He was just a man, alive, whole, and finally free.